Today I'm talking with Megan Hamilton about the idea of prenatal yoga. And this is a big topic that can span a whole volume of podcasts. But today we're going to really specialize on how Megan approaches prenatal yoga as a class, a standalone class for people that are pregnant within different the different trimesters. So how to approach a class where you have, maybe a person that just found out that they're pregnant versus a person that's in there for third trimester, and how do we approach those classes and keep people safe? But also, as a yoga teacher myself that doesn't specialize in prenatal, I have pregnant people that come to my classes quite a bit, and I have things that I've been taught over the years to, regurgitate to tell people to stay safe in certain ways, what to look out for. But it's their factfulness to a lot of that stuff. And so we dive into a little bit of, some of the myths around, what we've been telling yoga students. But I think one of the biggest things that we really need to understand, and one of the things that Megan really stresses in the trainings that she does, but the space that she holds also, is creating that mind-body connection and in a healthy way. And that's, a lot of the movement practices and the non-asana practices of yoga teach us that, how to connect with the mind and the body. And especially when you're going through something that your body is changing drastically from day to day, if not, hour to hour, depending on which stage of pregnancy that you're in. And so finding those ways to help somebody listen to the body that's changing right before their very eyes might help them gain more confidence in how to react in kind to that body, to the emotions, to the hormones, to the physicality that's happening within that person. I'm really excited to talk with Megan. She's got immense knowledge in this field. This conversation is full of just informative anecdotes and allegoric stories, and just Megan's a joy to talk to. So I hope you get something out of the conversation. We'll see you on the other side. But first, this message. No matter how much we prepare, the holidays tend to stress us out. So this year, take a moment to reset and recenter with a grounding retreat in Costa Rica. Join Jeff Hawkins, Steve Wimmer, Cameron Nagashima, and myself, Adam Reel, for a one-week immersive yoga retreat at Blue Osa Resort, backed up to miles of pristine beach. Every day you'll have an option to experience yoga, meditation, relaxation, self-discovery, adventures, or your own personal free time. This is a time to build your peaceful practices before you need them. Take this time for yourself. Visit GarudaWellness.com for details. We have pricing options available, and if you pay in full by July 1st, you receive a 20% discount. Through the experiences offered, there's a lot of different ways to build your practice and approach this retreat. Take time to create space for yourself so you can hold space for others. Reset and recenter. Visit GarudaWellness.com for more information. That's Garuda, Garuda, Wellness, WELLNESS.com. GarudaWellness.com. And now an uninterrupted podcast from Megan Hamilton. All right, welcome back to our show. Today I'm joined by a lovely co-teacher of mine, and Megan, it seems like I've known you forever. But
I know,
even
it's
though
weird.
it's been maybe a year.
It has been a year.
That's weird.
It has been almost exactly 1 year.
There's people in my life, and I've made this joke a lot when I used to work in restaurants, because I did that for 20 years. And after a while, things meld together. And I had a lot of people a lot of staff members, whether it was management or hourly staff, that would go from place to place with me. So I had some people at Red Hook that would come with me to the iPick and, different places. And so I got into this habit of just completely forgetting where I knew people from and starting to tell stories to staff that have no idea who I'm talking about, thinking that they all worked together in previous jobs with me. And, there's this one woman, Madison, that came with me to 2 jobs. And I would start telling her stories about my entrance into the restaurant world when she was probably 10. They were like, yeah, you remember Lul? And she's like, yeah, I remember the name Lul. I remember the job, but I didn't work with you. I was a teenager. I was in high school.
You've told this story 12 times.
Fucking Madison. Yeah.
I mean, and it's interesting because we were brought together by Marianne Ames. Right. I have known her for over 20 years.
Ah, yes. Previous lives.
I was at the birth of one of her kids.
Uh-huh.
We have known each other all this time. Now we're full circle here.
Yeah.
Doing the stuff I do now together. And then I've got people like you that I'm like, okay, a year? What?
Yeah, I know. It's like decade, year. Yeah. Is there a zero after that?
Time is weird.
It is weird. But Either way, I'm honored to share this space with you. Over the short year that we've known each other, we've taught next to each other. You've covered tons of my classes. Just love your energy and the way you approach the knowledge that you have. And so, as I got to know you more, just knowing about your background with doula work, midwifery, with prenatal yoga. We're on the precipice of you and Marianne launching a CEU or a Yoga Alliance prenatal course.
Yes.
Which has just got all this live, right? And as a yoga teacher, so we're going to approach this in for a couple different ways, right? So there's the person that's pregnant.
Yep.
There's the person that maybe is the prenatal coach or teacher for that pregnant person or pregnant people. But there's also, like myself, I don't teach prenatal yoga, but I do teach a lot of different types of asana style classes, usually in hot rooms. And there are periodic, pregnant folks that come through and say, hey, this is where I'm at, first, second, third trimester, lots of sickness, don't feel good on my belly, don't want to, can I do this instead of that? And we have these litany of questions that, luckily most of the studios that I work at have some kind of laminated sheet, the hatha sequence for pregnancy or something, then, a lot of modifications. But there's also a lot of myths around hot yoga, a lot of opinions around hot yoga and pregnancy.
Yes.
And we're not here to tell somebody they're wrong, but we want to discuss some of the prenatal yoga ideas that you're working through, but as well as, somebody like myself that doesn't teach prenatal, but deals with a lot of pregnant folks.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of potential for this conversation, which I'm really excited about.
Who knows where this will end up?
You never know.
I am excited to find out.
Oh yeah. So before we get into it, Megan, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your time and knowledge. There's a lot of opinions around pregnancy and yoga, and I've got 2 daughters myself. But when we had our children. I was not doing yoga at the time, right? So I didn't have any kind of understanding of what to ask, like trimester, twistings, all this hot, not hot stuff. But now as, I've got about a decade under my belt for teaching yoga and have, gotten a lot of questions. And, for the most part, I feel comfortable keeping a human safe in my classes as long as I know kind of what their body's experiencing, whether it's a pregnancy, an injury, or something like that.
Yeah.
But there's being a part of a lot of teacher trainings. There's not a lot of emphasis put on pregnancy and yoga unless you're specializing in it. There's broad brush stroke stuff, and so I'm really excited to talk with you about how to approach this from the pregnancy side, from the teacher side, from the prenatal side, the more in-depth side, and just kind of get some some anecdotal things that have helped you out throughout the years. And so maybe we'll start by just kind of talking about how you found yourself in this realm of pregnancy yoga. And I love that you're already laughing.
How far back are we going here? Yeah.
Yeah. So where'd you dip that toe in?
So I found yoga, it was probably 17, 18 years ago, shortly after I started doing birth work.
Okay.
I had a young child. I was going to the YMCA every day, and whatever class was offered, I was going to take it because free childcare.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. I'm a Y brat. We call them Y brats.
Yes.
My mom worked at the Y, so my brothers and I, we all were born and raised in the YMCA.
Yeah.
That childcare is impeccable.
Impeccable.
Oh
I mean, and those people that are caring for those kids, I felt like I could walk away and be gone for a week and my kids would be taken care of.
Yep.
So I started doing yoga there, and I got really lucky that a yoga studio that is still there to this day, Spark Marysville, is across the street from that YMCA. And I don't remember why I wandered in there. I don't know. I mean, I remember being terrified.
Yeah.
And it was even before the current owners owned it. Like, that studio opened, the owner disappeared, and then Chuck and Cammie came into the picture.
Yeah.
So I've been around that place that long, practicing. And even back then, I was threatening to quit my job and teach yoga. But I was at the place, I was getting to do what I loved. When my second child was born, I just wanted to soak in everything pregnancy and birth and all of that. And so I did what every person in Seattle does when that happens, and I became a doula.
Oh, there you go.
That doula profession started here in Seattle. One of my best friend's moms was one of the original doulas.
So the doula profession as an actual recognized profession.
As something we train and something we have credentials for, started here in Seattle.
I'll be damned.
There's a woman named Penny Simkin who just passed away a couple of months ago. And 7 or 8 other women that came together and said, let's make this a thing. Amazing. One of those women attended the birth of my kids, and that was...
Wow, that's quite the lineage.
I have, right. I mean, when you talk about lineage in yoga, I have that in birth,
wow, that's
to be
fantastic.
honest. And I just wanted to be able to be in that world. I loved being pregnant, but I also loved birth.
Right.
I'm one of those people who goes, the births of my kids, not just being presented with a child, but actually doing the work of giving birth was one of the best days of my life. Well, one of them, it was like 3 days, but...
Well, that's okay. So let me just perspective wise. So let's say that would have been in the late 90s, early mid 2000s, somewhere in there.
That was so 2003.
Okay.
Because the child who got me there just turned 21.
So that's just okay. So I like contextualize, like just I guess sometimes we just assume things have been around longer than they have been, you know, and like the idea of like so. There's a guy named Dr. Zach Bush that I follow, and there's this is one of the things that he's noticed as a birthing doctor around the world, and he says this, and this is just information I'm sharing. I've not had a child personally. I can't birth a child. I'm not judging somebody for taking these routes. Mm-hmm. This is just information that this person's found that I'm regurgitating in the light that he has shared. Now, the thing that he said is when he first learned how to deliver babies, he went to Africa. He was kind of bouncing around Africa, helping out like different villages and stuff like that. Yeah. And he said no matter where he went, no matter how malnourished the mother was, they would, as long as everything was like healthy, they would deliver naturally, vaginal births, right? Mm-hmm. And again, no matter how malnourished the mother was, the babies 95% of the time were 100% healthy, right? Mm-hmm. Natural vaginal births, again, unless there's a complication. And the mom and the baby would grow together and they'd be fine. And now in the States, he said when he came over here, he started to notice that the rise of C-sections were growing, and optional C-sections, not like medical C-sections. And we're seeing a lot of issues with the babies, with the mothers, because we're not, in the understanding that I have is we're not completing with a vaginal birth. When you go through the vagina, you're inhaling a lot of the right. A lot of you're completing your immune system.
I love that you get this. I'm like tearing up that you are actually saying these words because most people don't get that deep into why it's a problem.
Right. Yeah. And this was the introduction to me. Like it was all foreign language to me basically until he, I heard him say this. And one of the things in the other side, so there's the whole like completion of your immune system. There's like the mother going through the process if they're able to, right? To feel the birth, right? Mm-hmm. And not to numb themselves from it. But the other side of this, which really fascinated me, I'm surprised I haven't told you the story before with your background, is so he said, look at the archetypes, right? So let's look at the archetypes, right? So we have archetypes that represent as masculine and feminine in every single body that, you look back at Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell, stuff like that. Now, looking at Joseph Campbell's work about the archetypes being stories, this person's the hypothesis, a theory, I guess, they're working with vaginal births is if you have a vaginal birth as a child, that's your first time that you had to fight for your life to survive. You're in a womb. You're surrounded by water. You're being fed through your stomach. You can barely see or hear anything. And then all of a sudden, all that water drops out. You're upside down. Now you're breathing through orifices you couldn't even realize you had. And now you're going through this cave.
Literally something in your body changes when you hit air.
Right. And then all of a sudden you're fighting for your life. You're in a cave of wonders. And you're like, oh my God, I got to get out of this cave. And then you get out and it's bright and it's loud and somebody smacks you on the ass and then you start crying. I never used that orifice for that before, right? And that's your first survival story. Yeah. I survived as an archetype. That's our first story of survival.
I absolutely.
And the person, the other side of this is like, look at the downtroddenness of, the way we look at our youth and now they don't have ambition or gumption or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Well, if they didn't fight to be here in the first place, they just all of a sudden popped out and they were here, then they don't have a reason to be here, down deep subconsciously. So,
and I do, there is a place for modern medicine.
Totally.
And there is a place where lives can be saved. My best friend is the director of an organization called Midwives for Haiti.
Okay.
It is the most dangerous place in the world to have a baby, is in Haiti. I mean, really one of the most dangerous places to live.
Period. Yeah. Child mortality rate.
Because not only are there the risks that are there for a multitude of reasons around the pregnancies, it's simply dangerous to go to the hospital because being on the roads right now is not safe.
Right.
And they save lives because they look at very simple things and go, nutrition here is terrible. They don't have access to healthy food. Mm-hmm. If we can feed women, we can keep them healthier.
Right.
If we can make sure that there are trained people in communities to help women give birth in those communities, rather having to get on the road and go and literally possibly be kidnapped. Wow. I'm on the board of directors of this organization, so I say we, but one of our staff members was kidnapped.
Wow.
And held for quite a while, and survived.
Okay.
So I look at it and go, yes, there's a place for modern medicine. One of the new teachers at Bliss ran a fundraiser yesterday, and we have about $400 we're sending there, and that will like cover a handheld Doppler to listen to babies' heart rates. Like that stuff is amazing. And in the United States, there are C-sections that save lives. Mm-hmm. But there's a whole bunch of things we're doing, and even around vaginal birth, that the experience, you're right, isn't 100% biologically completing. And how do we know what impact that has? Right. How do we really know? I'm laughing when you're talking about that, though. I literally have a yoga nidra script that I use that is swimming through a cave and coming out to a bright light. And wow, how did I do, like... How did I come up with that? But it's literally like you come out and then there's conflict and you have to deal with it. Yep. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's good stuff.
I'm going to pull that out again and look at it and see what I accidentally did. So yes, there are things in our culture around birth. And that's why I got into doing birth work in the first place. Mm-hmm. So I was a doula. I became a childbirth educator. I became a postpartum doula. I then went to midwifery school, but I never actually practiced because I made a decision. I wanted to completely change my life, and I was going to be single. Okay. And midwives don't have health insurance, and the training that I had, I was training to be a licensed midwife in the state of Washington. Okay. So birth center births and home births. You are fully self-employed, and the stability, unless you join a really big practice, isn't there. Mm-hmm. So I left that world. But I was at about 800, 900 births.
Oh, wow.
Over the course of the 13 years.
So you put in some work. You caught some babies.
I put in some work. I have caught some babies. Some babies have landed on my feet. Okay. I have been wearing $200 jeans, and a woman was giving birth really quickly, and suddenly there are fluids. I've done the down and dirty part of birth.
But just to comment on that real quick, I would imagine you could probably sell those jeans now for a high dollar, because there are pants that I saw recently that are pre-stained to look like you've peed your pants. Yeah. They sell for like $650.
Amniotic fluid, baby.
Fucking man, look at you. A whole other fans page you could start with that shit.
Absolutely. Yeah. God. And it was an amazing part of my life. It's exhausting.
Oh, I could imagine.
I was literally, for most of 13 years, on call 24/7. I have left my child's birthday party. Mm-hmm. My son, at his high school graduation, I got a message that one of our clients was in labor. I watched him walk across the stage, and then I left the auditorium. My kids, there's a certain ringtone on iPhones that if they hear it anywhere in public, and they are 21 and 25, they yell, "Birth!" to this day. So I went on, I had a corporate career. Yeah. I did all the things you're supposed to do to progress in that. I had the big girl job with the big girl paycheck and worked my way. I had a job that I loved but needed to make a change for a lot of reasons. Took the job that was supposed to be it. Right. And it was a disaster. I hated every minute of it. You know, being the only woman in an industry where there are not women is a big fight.
I couldn't even imagine.
And then having the people who hired you pushed out and new people brought in by literally a global conglomerate. I was just really struggling with doing it. And I had a day, I took a sick day and I went to an energy worker who I had met somewhere else. Did a session with her, and the whole thing, she was like, "You're not going to be doing this anymore. You know, this is something else is coming. Be open to it."
Right.
Went to take a class at Bliss with Marianne, and after class, I told her that. We had probably 20 minutes where she just went, "Yes, that is absolutely true. There is something else." She even brought you up at that point because we were talking about quit your job, teach yoga, make this a thing, and actually survive. And she brought up, you know, the people we know who have done this. And I was like, okay, whatever. And that was on a Monday. The next day I was getting up and getting ready and standing there in the mirror, getting ready, literally crying.
Damn.
And my partner looked at me and he's like, "What?" And I said, "If I had health insurance, I would quit today."
Wow.
And at 1:00, I was laid off.
Wow.
So, and my only response was, "Fuck you, thank you."
Right, yeah, yeah.
I didn't have a moment of panic. I'm really blessed in the fact that I have a partner and stability around me that it wasn't terrifying.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, I was on a plane to Mexico to do yoga teacher training. And had Marianne said, "Okay, your class is going to be Thursday nights at 7 p.m., which is also terrifying. I had not even auditioned for her or anything. But she just had a plan, as she does.
As she does. Yep, totally. She's got to trust sometimes.
I did audition. I did prove that I could do this.
Yeah. Well, and you've been successly doing it now for a number of years, or for a bit of time now.
Right.
So,
I have held, and I've progressed and I've improved, I'd like to believe.
100%.
I swore I wasn't going to do prenatal. I'm retired.
I'm not going back into that.
Retired birth worker. That doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
Because you're in a studio and everybody goes, "Oh yeah, Megan used to work in birth. Ask her." And then people around you go, "Do you teach prenatal yoga?" And I'm like, "Fine, okay." And I was talking to my original teacher trainer, and I said, "I have the option of teacher training that looks fantastic from an energetic standpoint, but is pretty expensive, and I'm convinced I'm going to know 90% of what is presented there.
Yep.
Or go quick and dirty, take one of the online courses."
Right.
And she said, "Don't be dumb. Just check the boxes. You know how to teach this already."
Right.
And I think that helped me a lot because I literally I skimmed through, I watched the videos, I took the tests, I did the things. Because I felt at that time I really needed some kind of credential behind my name. I look back and go, that's 85 hours of my life that I could have been doing something else.
Totally.
But it also taught me that I felt like we needed to do something different, teaching yoga teachers to teach prenatal yoga or to even interact with pregnant people.
Right. And I think there's a big message in that too. Like, there are definitely certificates and certification programs set up for people that need them. I do believe, we talked a little bit offline, and I've talked about this in the show before, but I do believe that it's a little too bonkers out there with the requirements or thinking we need this and that. I do feel there's a level of information that once you gain, you can start to build you can support that information in the way that you feel safe. That's definitely up to the person individual. But there's so much that can be said for the experience that you have,
Yeah.
right? The knowledge that you have, the passion that you have around it, the reason that you're brought to that, right? And, and again, like I think that we get too caught up in some of these certificates and these things that they become roadblocks for a lot of us to not even take that step forward, because we might get decision paralysis then.
To call yourself a prenatal yoga teacher, you have to do the 85-hour training, and then you have to teach 100 hours.
Right, yeah.
100 hours of prenatal yoga is really hard to do.
Right. Yeah.
That will take most people years because it's one class a week at a studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and just to piggyback on that, like you need to make sure you're safe in what you're teaching.
Right.
But also don't discount the knowledge that you already have.
Yes.
Right. Don't discount the experience that you already have.
And I feel this way about, there's a lot of modalities in what we do, that there are people who just get it.
Yeah.
And you can sink into, there are people who can teach guided meditations that haven't gone through and done certifications, blah, blah, blah. Right. You just speak from a place that's authentic. Right. And I think teaching prenatal yoga is that way, except for the fact that there is actually a lot of safety stuff to think about.
Right, yeah.
And there's just, talk about a moving target with your students. It's intense.
Yeah, I can imagine. So just for those listening that might not understand what prenatal yoga is, like how would you define prenatal yoga?
So prenatal yoga is essentially, as a certification would teach it, is safely modifying asana, teaching pranayama that are safe for pregnant bodies, that address common aches and pains, and then enough knowledge about warning signs and what's safe and what isn't to be able to decide whether you feel comfortable having a student in your class.
Okay.
And that's even when I am teaching fully prenatal classes. There's a really simple condition that is very common in pregnancy, pubic symphysis dysfunction.
Okay.
So there's a hormone in pregnancy called relaxin.
Yep.
It causes the connective tissues to soften because your pelvis has to get out of the way to have a baby be born. There's a peak of it early in pregnancy and there's a peak late in pregnancy. But for some women, what happens is, and it is not localized, it's not just your pelvis.
Right, yeah.
Pregnant women have loosey-goosey ankles and knees and wrists. And that's one of the things that I think is hard when you have just a pregnant person in your class, is you're not thinking about, it's kind of similar to having someone who is hypermobile.
But and all of a sudden became hypermobile.
Too. Right, and they weigh a couple more pounds every week, and their center of gravity changes every single week, and their energy and all of these things is so different every single week. There's so much wrapped up into how we can address it safely. I do teach standalone prenatal classes. It's very generalized because if you think about it, a person in their first trimester, 14, 15, 16 weeks, just found out they're pregnant. Physically, they probably look exactly like anybody else. They move pretty close to anybody else. They can still lay on their belly.
Okay.
There's not a whole lot you have to worry about unless you're talking hot room, and that's a whole nother story. But she's going to walk into class along with a woman who is 39 weeks pregnant, could go into labor tomorrow or today.
During class.
And it's both of their first class.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
Because oftentimes people at the end of pregnancy, they are miserable and uncomfortable, and someone says, you should take prenatal yoga.
Yep.
And they show up at 37 weeks and they've never done yoga before. So how do you create a practice that I don't want to just have a generic, here's the sequence we're doing today.
Or break it up to like, oh, this is only first trimester classes. This is only second trimester. And
you spend a lot of time wandering around and handing people blocks.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And everything is so different depending on, just like always, length of limbs and body size and all of that. But it's like on steroids.
Yeah, man.
And every single student is significantly different every single week.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more like teaching prenatal yoga is a lot more complicated than we think.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely more information we should get out there to all of us because pregnant people do walk into our classes, hot or not. And I had one of our mutual friends ask me, what can't I do? There's a pregnant person in my class.
Yep. Okay.
He said, I know they can't go on their bellies.
You're right.
And, it was the yin class. Yin is not good for pregnant people because you spend half of your time on your belly.
Yep. And with the relaxin comment you just
the
made,
relaxin,
the tissues are just already open, and then you're going to spend 5 minutes opening them even deeper.
Right. And then they're going to stand up and their hip is going to fall out of its socket.
Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah. It's, so there's so much out there, and people think, oh, yin would be wonderful for pregnant women. So relaxing. No. You're trying to take them into a place that's not safe for that range of motion.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, and I might be wrong, but it seems like maybe a more supportive practice like Iyengar might be more.
It is all about the props.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's support your knees. Let's support your hips. Let's make sure your spine feels good. You don't have to arms extender in child's pose. You can bend the elbows. Let's put a pillow under your cheek. Turn your gaze to the right.
Prop yourself up. Okay. Pillows, bolsters, blankets under your knees. Yep. Because everything when your joints are loosey-goosey like that, even everything is more sensitive. Little known fact, carpal tunnel is super common in pregnancy.
Oh.
So women's wrists are miserable. So, cat, cow, and down dog feel great.
Yep.
But their wrists are screaming.
Mm-hmm.
So you start to go, okay, if I put them on blocks and turn their hands sideways.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a hack for the carpal tunnel student. But it also, for pregnant people, you should offer it all the time because your same student is going to come 1 week and they're going to go, oh, wow, that's terrible. We started talking about pubic symphysis pain, and I realized we tangented.
Yeah, it happens.
With that particular situation, they probably shouldn't be doing yoga.
Yeah.
If they're having sciatic pain, we can help them all day long.
Right.
And it's literally a very similar sensation on opposite sides of the body. But one of them, you are going to make it worse.
Yeah. Now, how do you approach that kind of conversation? Especially with somebody that. So I've got massage therapist friends that have had to either stop or turn away a massage from regulars that they have because they're experiencing some kind of medical. Phenomenon, right? So let's say most recently a friend of mine had to actually ended up taking this person to the hospital because she's like, okay, well, I can't work on you. You've got a concussion. And
you shouldn't also be driving.
You shouldn't be driving. Someone's going to take you to the hospital, right?
Yeah.
So, how did those conversations go? When, let's say that somebody does come in with what they consider sciatica, but it's that front pelvis pain like you were talking about, and they're expecting to get some kind of relief in yoga, and you're like, well, honestly, I can't even help you. I'm not even going to let you come into this because it's going to make it worse.
Yeah.
And then you got emotions and endorphins and hormones and pregnancies and lack of sleep and changing bodies. Like, those got to be, pretty sensitive conversations to have at times.
Yeah, and I'm lucky in the fact that my classes are currently small enough. There's things happening that may change that, but they're small enough that I can almost run 2 concurrent classes at the same time.
Okay.
So the last student that I was presented with that, I said, okay, there's a lot of things you can't do. You are here. I'm going to give you some things that don't work into that area at all, and we're going to work into helping you feel better in some other places.
Okay.
I'm going to be cueing you something, and the rest of the class is going to be doing something else. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
And she was cool with it. But in a general population class, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Man,
well, it's even hard as a yoga teacher to sometimes, especially I'll speak as a male yoga teacher. There's precautions that we have to take just to make sure everybody feels safe, and not to make sure I don't get sued, right? And yes, that's part of it. But I'm more concerned with your safety as a practitioner rather than my safety as, because if I'm making sure you're safe, then innately I'm safe, right?
Right.
Now, part of that safety is I'm not going to say, hey, are you pregnant? My reflexes are not that good.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just general good life rule.
Right, yeah. There looks like a baby in there. Oh, there's not. Oh, fucking hell. I'm so sorry.
I mean, never assume. Because there are bellies in the world that look like they are 40 weeks pregnant and they are not.
Yep. I used to have one of those bellies.
Right.
I know how it is.
I know those bellies. So, yeah, you never want to assume somebody's pregnant. That belly, though, doesn't feel good laying on their bellies.
Yeah.
Those people, they are uncomfortable. Think about back when you were that size. What would it feel like to do floor bow?
No, not at all. Not one bit.
What would it feel like?
Fuck, man.
The entire floor series of...
Yeah, like a cobra pose or a locust. Not at all.
None of it works.
No.
And, that's a challenge in our everyday lives, too. We have students walk into our classes, and you can see based on a body shape, and this is not making any kind of assumptions, because I have had some people that I am like, wow, that is impressive. Mm-hmm. But you start to think about, okay, what's in my sequence that I'm going to need to offer some suggestions to the whole group to make that person feel safe.
Yeah.
So sometimes that is there, but I think with pregnancy, you have to have a little bit more targeted conversation with them, especially if you're talking about hot yoga.
Yeah. Now with the let's say the public prenatal classes, not the training you and Marianne are going to be doing, but just say the public classes, anybody that's within that pregnancy that wants to come can come.
Yeah.
Is it set up more like, is it to me it seems like there's a good chunk of like informative, because you said bodies change every week that you see them. Like I could be, let's say my spouse comes to you every week, and from week to week to week that person is dramatically changing, right? And so is there like a combination level of like information, informative, these are some of the things to look at it where you're at. Yeah. And then after the informative side, okay, now we're going to do a little bit of movement, a little bit of maybe supportedness or whatever that kind of thing is. Mm-hmm. Is that, is there like a structure or is it like kind of moving target?
There is. So I personally work exactly under that structure.
Okay.
We sit down and talk as a group before class. And it is literally, how do you feel? What do you need?
Right.
I say that a lot in all of the different things that I do. But
that's a great way to start
life.
It
is a great, right? Yeah. Credit to Brett Larkin for that one, by the way. Okay. I have done some training with her, and that's one of her phrases that I have picked up and carried. But what's going on in your body? What's going on in your head? What can I offer to you to help?
Right.
And they will they'll tell you, oh my gosh, I'm not sleeping, or my hip is, we'll start to talk about those aches and pains. Mm-hmm. Part of it, I have to walk this line because in some ways I know too much.
Okay.
Because as a yoga teacher, you never want to diagnose. Just like if you had somebody come into class and you could tell that there was an injury, you're never going to say, dude, your ACL.
Right. You're right.
Not your place.
Yeah.
You're going to say you should go to somebody and talk about your knee.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because you're gasping.
Yes.
Every time it bends.
Yes, and I am not a doctor.
I am not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV. Right. And I will often say, I'm not going to play doula. I'm not going to, doulas actually work in that same realm. You don't get to diagnose. Right. That is a place for midwives and physicians. It's harder for some people than others. I have that whole library of all of my actual academic learning as well as experience. Mm-hmm. In my mind, I diagnosed that woman's pubic symphysis pain. I said, you need to go talk to your physical therapist or your doctor.
Right.
And here's some things it might be. This is one.
Right.
There might be some other things.
Well, in a way, too, that, I feel like there's a double responsibility there. Like you're being responsible by honoring the information that you have, even though you might have, intuition to, or, your years of knowledge bring you towards this insight, right?
Yeah.
But the other side of it too is maybe that person didn't come looking for you to give them some kind of information, right?
Right.
And not to say that you're not the right person, but put that on them.
Right.
Make them do the work. Hey, I do believe there's something that needs to be addressed. I'm not the right person. You need to take the reins and go find a person that can give you this feedback. Now, if they come back to you, maybe that's a different story. But again, like it's like giving things away for free, right? In the energy world, like when we do energy work, there needs to be some reciprocity, or the person that's receiving isn't fully sold and bought into the process. Now, whether it's like a high five and a hug, a cup of coffee, a casserole somebody made you, it doesn't always have to be money.
Yeah.
But there needs to be some kind of reciprocity there. And so to me, like it feels like that. Like it's not only your responsibility, you're owning your responsibility in the line of teaching that you're doing, but you're also kind of putting that back on the student to be like, well, if you want the answer, seek the answer. I'm not just going to give you an answer I feel you should have, right?
Yeah, and in those conversations, that's why I put it that way. I'm not like, okay, you have to report to me everything that's going on in your body, because you are surrounded by, I'm passionate about creating a safe space for them, but I'm also passionate about that body autonomy. That's one of the big things of the teacher training we're doing that we're talking about, because I would argue pregnant women have less body autonomy in the United States than any other population. It's ridiculous.
Which is
and
like
we could
just
go
the
on forever.
stupidest, most honest statement I've ever heard.
Yeah, and I mean, what other, I don't want to say medical condition, because pregnancy is not pathology.
Right, yeah.
It simply is a life phase.
Yeah, it's part of us.
Part of us.
Yeah.
It is
It's
how
not like I caught pregnancy.
I caught pregnancy. I mean, yeah, you did. Good job.
Kind of know how it happened.
So if something's going on in someone's body and they choose not to tell me, that is their right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If I see someone moving in a particular way that I can see discomfort, I might be a little bit more probing in my questions.
Right.
But, I've also taught a student who had a really significant shoulder injury, and she literally refused to stop coming to class. And every time her arms went above her head, she grimaced. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There was a photographer in class one day. She was there. There are photos of this woman looking like she's about to scream.
Right.
Because her arms are over her head. And, I also go, that is her choice.
Yep, totally. Yep.
She signed a waiver.
Yep.
If I sense something needs to be careful, oftentimes I will just adjust my plan for the class on the fly. And to be quite honest, as a teacher, I think you and I are exactly the opposite. You are I've heard, very methodical about planning your sequences. Mm-hmm. And every time I try to do that, I walk into the room and my brain just goes, nope, not today, not with these guys. Not whatever I came up with is not going to work today.
Totally.
And I think we're probably the extremes of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because when I'm talking to new teachers and I say, I don't plan my classes, I play on my mat and I record myself.
Right.
And I find great joy in finding cool transitions. And I'm going to work that in there somehow. No idea how it's going to happen.
Right, yeah.
So I'm able to do that with a prenatal class. So if I've got somebody that is moving in a way that I'm like, oh yeah, that's not great, we're just not going to do things that will make that worse.
Yeah.
And I won't necessarily tell them. I'm just not going to hurt them.
Yeah, totally. Well, okay, so before we get into the training that you guys are doing, as the teacher for prenatal, and for the folks that are either pregnant, have people in their lives that are pregnant, or considering pregnancy, what are some things like for each trimester that, like I say, a prenatal class can be helpful for? Like, is there certain things like per trimester that you would say maybe more impactful during that specific trimester than maybe another one that somebody can maybe find some relief for, that they didn't even realize they're gritting their teeth through, right? So a lot of times we don't realize we're dipping below baseline until we're like dragging our face on the ground.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you feel that dip, like where's those supportive things that you can, maybe offer that people can look for?
Well, and there's the physical parts of that, the things we can do just based on how the body's changing.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also this idea of listen to your body.
Right.
We say that in yoga all the time.
Right.
What does it really mean, and do they really understand?
Yeah.
And that's where my passion really is if I can help women figure out, if I am uncomfortable, how can I move to make that more comfortable? That's my job.
Right.
So, yes, there's some things, in early pregnancy, you're usually talking about energy levels really drop.
Yeah, right.
They're tired all the time. You can give them a 20-minute Shavasana and they're like, yes, please. And they're going to fall asleep because they're still going about their everyday lives and their hormones are insane. And they're trying to go to work or parent their other kids or just go out with their friends or do whatever they're doing, but they're just tired. So giving them opportunities to rest can be really huge. But then also there's a lot of talking about honoring your body and the changes and getting outside of, our perceptions of our bodies and how they look as our worth is still a thing.
Right.
As much as we don't want it to be.
Well, and also just a real quick comment on that too. Like we could be saying, honor your body, listen to your body, listen to your body. Like I can't tell you a yoga teacher that I haven't heard say that. Right. But to be fair, like, okay, so I've been teaching now for about 10 years. I would say I've easily taught at least 1,000 Hatha classes. And I'm very, for those not in the P and Dub, Hatha is the shortened version of Bikram that we call Hatha. I know Hatha means yoga. I get it. That's just, I didn't make up the term.
We are wrong.
Right.
We understand.
But that's what we've accepted of the P and Dub as the 26 and 2, right?
Right.
Now, I the way I approach that class is I'm very methodical. I teach it more or less the same, lather, rinse, repeat. You're a dancer, you're going to hear it at the same time every time, more or less. Yeah. Little quirks here and there. But I've had people that have taken probably a good, maybe half, if not more, of those 1,000 classes from me that will come out now, let's say like class 700, and they'll be like, man, the way you cued dancer today was so good. It really got me into that depth. And I'm like, okay, you didn't hear the other 699 times I cued it that same fucking exact way. This was your time to hear it, right? And so the reason I say that is because you could be saying, listen to your body till you're blue in the face, but if that person doesn't actually understand what that means or physically hearing you because of all the other shit that they're trying to figure out, the vernacular, the heat, the sweat, the breath, all the music, all the shit, just because you're saying it doesn't mean they hear it. And just because they hear it doesn't mean they understand it.
And doesn't mean that they truly believe that you mean it.
Right. I've got there's the person that's been practicing at one of the studios I teach at for years and came to me the other day and says, Adam, I've been practicing yoga for, let's say, 20 years between different studios, here for 10 years at least. And I just realized I'm not fucking breathing right.
Yeah.
You know?
You're not.
You're probably sniffing the pizza around you. You're not actually breathing into like the
and to be clear, there's not really a right or wrong because I do say, there's no perfection in any of the stuff we do. There's things that we know make it feel better. Make it more effective. But yeah. They're walking through our classes and not hearing. And I think, when I teach Hatha, I'm very methodical, but I call it almost deconstructed.
Right.
It is weight onto your left foot.
Right.
Lift just your heel, get your balance, then find the inside of your foot. Right. Like my dancer takes a full minute just to cue it to get there.
You set up, right?
Which I will tell, like when I have experienced students who haven't taken my class, I'm going to tell them it's going to frustrate you. I challenge you to try it.
Challenge you to sit in the frustration.
Right? Because maybe you're going to figure out something different.
Yeah.
But I also say at the beginning of every class, if you are here to just lay on your mat and take a nap and listen to your own breath, I am honored to hold that space for you.
Yeah.
If I can convince all of them to do it, then I can do it too.
Right, yeah, totally,
That's my dream.
Like I'm speaking to you, but I'm talking to me.
But I'm talking to me, yes. And I have had a studio owner walk in and take a nap fully for the entire hour of my class.
Oh, that's a great example.
Shout out to Cammie for telling me before she did it because she had never taken my class before. If it had just happened, I would have been like, oh no.
Yeah, that would have been
now I'm fired.
But yeah, that's what a great thing for a studio owner to do.
Body,
too.
You had an episode, and it was pretty old, about the crazy things we say that don't make any sense.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's one of them.
Yeah.
When we say listen to your body, people are like, does my body talk? I mean, my mouth talks.
When my body talks, I have to leave the room because I farted.
Right? Like I'm making weird noises. My hip clicks very loudly. Okay. You can hear it across the studio. My body is talking. Mm-hmm. Teaching people to truly do that is a whole nother concept.
Right.
But what I try to do, and I have a general population yoga class, and then I have a program that I teach that is essentially intuitive movement to prepare you for birth.
Okay.
Which is just, the lights are low, the music is something very intentionally picked to get people out of their heads. And it's much more a dance. I give a suggestion. We're going through the different levels. We're regulating at the beginning, and then we're on our hands and knees, but it's move however you want. Mm-hmm. Then we're in some kind of forward folding shape, and then we're up and moving and suggesting twirling and suggesting these things. Because that's how women move in labor if they have no inhibition.
Okay.
Convincing them to do it, especially in a hospital setting, is almost impossible.
Right.
And that is what we're missing in this country, and why your friend, what the difference is between the two.
Yeah.
Is in other places in the world, it is your care provider will be there to watch, and when your baby is visible, they will help a little bit.
Yeah.
That is not to take away from trained birth professionals. Yeah. There's incredible skill involved that you use 0.5% of the time.
I was going to say, it almost sounds like, at least in the States, it's almost like, maybe it's a little bit better, but it's very similar to me in the way we approach death, where it's it just happens and we don't talk about it. Like birth happens and all of a sudden they're here, but we don't really talk about what goes into it.
So women talk about it.
Yeah.
But they only talk about the bad parts.
Okay.
If you sit around in a circle of women who are talking birth stories, you are going to hear scary things. Mm-hmm. And I hate that for women who have never had babies before. And even ones who didn't have a great experience the first time, getting that out of their head and going back to just, let's see what happens, because most of the time it's okay.
Right, yeah.
And it is hard and it is painful.
Yeah.
But you are strong. Your body, saying your body's meant to do this is such a cliche, but it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, there are factors, and our society have caused some of those factors. Yeah. There are nutritional factors in the U.S. that actually are worse than some places where people are incredibly malnourished.
Right.
Gestational diabetes in the United States is huge.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Because we eat carbs.
Yep.
We eat all the carbs.
Yep. There's food that we serve in the United States that's banned in third world countries.
In third world countries, right.
That we just readily, red number fucking 41 and yellow number 5 and shit. We're literally just pumping our kids full of this shit. Illegal in places like Indonesia.
Yes.
Right? What the fuck are we doing?
And I'm also not food shaming people. Yeah, it's going, you're hungry. When you're pregnant, you have weird cravings. And, I ate pounds of strawberries a day.
Good for you.
Probably more sugar than I should have, right? Whatever. Okay. But my baby wanted strawberries. Yeah. But we have just set ourselves up in the U.S. that we can go, okay, at 28 weeks, we're going to test your blood sugar. Oh, yeah, your blood sugar's high. Now your baby's big. Gestational diabetes, baby's going to be a little bit heavier. These are the risks. Oh, we should probably induce you because your baby's looking big because you have gestational diabetes. Then we have to really monitor, blah, 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 blah. We've created some of that.
Yeah, yeah.
But even in those scenarios, even women with highly medical pregnancies, if we can teach them to be quiet and really listen to themselves, they will know. When they're trying to decide, should my doctor wants to induce me. Some of them don't know they have an option. Yes, you in fact do. Yes. You could walk into a hospital having a heart attack, and if you say, I do not consent to this, they're going to walk away and lift their hands and walk away from you. Yeah. So and that's true in pregnancy too.
That's a good thing to know.
It is. Oh,
wow.
If I could tell one thing to pregnant women, it is there is nothing you have to do.
Right.
Yeah. You will sign forms that say doctors are allowed to do things, but the minute your words, "I do not consent to this," come out, they will stop.
They're walking away.
But teaching women to go, what is my intuition? You know? Because I've also seen women who felt like something was wrong and nobody believed them.
Yeah. Man.
There's a perinatal therapist in our community who had something incredible. I was at her birth, had something incredibly scary happen, and she was saying, this is not okay.
Right.
And the staff at the largest teaching hospital in Washington State was just kind of like, oh, you're fine. Oh, you're fine. Until her uterus ruptured. Yeah, it was not great. She's alive, baby's alive, everything's good. She went on to a career of helping women like her.
Hey, all right.
So, but she knew how to listen to her body. Yeah. She had some somatic training, you know, we need to shift real, like, intentional prenatal yoga in that direction of just going, you get to decide how you feel. You get to decide what makes you feel better. And you're not going to move in the same way she is because you don't have the same body. And that's true in every class we have.
Right.
It's just more time sensitive.
Right, yeah.
With a pregnant person. Yeah. It may take us years to get that with a student.
Right, yeah.
That takes our class twice a week. But you have plenty of time, right?
Uh-huh.
They go, I'm not breathing correctly. And you're like, okay, you're welcome.
Yep.
I'm glad I pulled that one out today.
Okay, so let's do second trimester.
Yes, second trimester.
So just things to look out for, things that it could help with for a prenatal class.
For a prenatal class, you're going to start to deal with bellies.
Okay.
Bellies are going to pop out.
Okay.
Different timing, but essentially then for any general prenatal class going onto the belly, you probably shouldn't do just because why introduce it if you're going to go on. So even first trimester, but it's still safe then.
Right.
So you start to think about that belly, the center of gravity, and what it is doing to their lower back.
Okay. So not necessarily what it's doing to the baby at that point. It's more so still the mother, still the houser of the baby, you know?
You cannot hurt a baby doing anything in prenatal yoga.
Good to know. Okay.
You can't.
Yeah.
Women can get in car accidents, and babies are just fine.
Yeah.
I know lots of women who have taken falls and landed on their bellies, and they're okay.
Okay.
It's not comfortable.
Right.
And putting someone, I mean, think about this. You had a big belly. Laying on your belly hurt your back.
Totally sucks.
Hurt your back. Because you were creating a curve in your spine that should not have been there.
Not natural at all.
That is not there. And so as women become more pregnant, the natural curve of their lower spine starts to get pressed out.
Oh. I guess that makes sense. I never thought about that. Yeah.
I always tell people, get a very pregnant woman and have them cat-cow. There's barely any movement. Yep. They do not have that flexibility at the base of their spine, but it feels really good to try. Because it's being pushed out all the time.
Yeah.
It's holding them essentially almost cow.
Yeah. And it's protruding where it was more maybe flush, and so that movement is just giving it a little bit of that's
you are just, it's like when you're just really tight and you can just like kind of jiggle your hip. I do this all the time. I've got a trick hip and I can just sit there and I can shake it, or I will ask my partner to shake my hip. Like if I'm whining in the middle of the night, my hip's hurting, he will like reach over and he'll just shake my hip, and it helps. Little movements feel really good. And it starts during that time. Women will sometimes start to get lightheaded or dizzy changing from folding to standing. So you start to, blood volume increases pretty significantly in the second trimester.
Okay.
But the blood doesn't necessarily go back to the brain the way that it should, or it will leave, you're in a forward fold, you stand up.
Yeah.
And there's other populations, people with POTS. It's the same kind of thing.
Okay.
So bringing them up from the floor really slowly, even when they feel like they don't need to. I'll have people that just pop right up, and I'm like, no, we're slowing down, because one day that's not going to work for you.
Right. And that's not just for yoga. That's teaching you as a human being.
As a human being.
In this stage of life, you need to get up slower because there's things happening.
You're bending down and you're picking up all the stuff that's all over the floor that that someone left and you stand right up, you're going to feel like you're going to pass out at some point in pregnancy.
Yep.
Almost every woman. So let's teach them to come up slowly and intentionally. When we're coming from folding forward, I stop in the middle, hands are on the thighs. Mm-hmm. We little cat-cow-ish motion with the hands on the thighs.
Yep.
Then we roll up the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And teaching them when you're coming up like that, stop for a second, settle. Then come up the rest of the way. Then see how you feel.
Man, that could be a life lesson, not just a pregnancy lesson. I think, that's so funny because, like, a lot of what you're talking about, I'm just like, I think I should do that.
Right?
I think I should do that. Like, things that I'm trying to work on myself is just, like, slow down in life. Like, why am I speeding through life? And, our aforementioned mutual friend, Marianne, talks a lot. He's been doing a lot of somatic training. And by, I'm a byproduct of being around here. I get to, learn with her.
Wow, we get some cool stuff, don't
right.
we?
And I think one of the things that she's taught me recently that I just love, and I don't do it all the time, but I'm trying to, but, the somatic, normalizing, I don't remember the name that she calls it, but basically it's like say I go into Fred Meyer grocery store or department store, and typically, I'm head down, I'm on a mission. I'm going in, I'm getting my fucking milk and granola, and I'm out, right? I don't want to see nobody. I want to talk to nobody. But that's a fear response, right? And there, I could hide it as like, oh, I'm just on a mission. I got time and blah, blah, blah. But truly, it's a fear response. Yeah. So going in, pulling yourself off to the side, getting out of the way, and taking a moment to look around. Look around at the building. Look around in the rafters. Look in the produce. See the people. See the carts. See the little dog over there. That's cool. I didn't think of dog. All this shit. And then your body's like, oh, I feel safe now.
I'm here.
Right. I'm
fine.
And it's like, I think, just like you said, just like stopping and supporting yourself, making sure your body feels good as you stand up. Like that might just be the old man in me that's talking, but like, man, there's so much, like if for me, again, like once I finding my way to slow down through life, it allowed me to view life differently. And it's like, you don't even realize how much you're rushing through life until you take that moment to pause. You don't realize how much you're white knuckling your steering wheel in your car until you slowly pry those fucking fingers away.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, man, like I think there's a lot of this. Just slow down, listen to your breath, listen to your body, do a little check-in, a little somatic work, right? Like that's amazing for people that are pregnant. Please do that. But like, person that's stuck in traffic, freaking out for whatever reason, that's also good for them.
Also really helpful,
Shit, man.
And I mean, just from a practical standpoint, I'm older than you, but we are both of the age that the possibility of throwing your back out, reaching down to pick something up off the floor and standing up, it is not zero.
Just looking somewhere wrong. I'm like, oh, God.
How many times do our students come in and they're like, oh my God, I did this. And you're like, what were you doing? And they're like,
picked up
mopping.
My remote. Yeah, exactly.
Carrying my suitcase or whatever. I had this moment, that slowing down piece. It was when I was married for 22 years. And when that relationship ended, I'm the one who moved out of the house we had lived in. I had my own apartment. I'd never lived alone. Mm-hmm. And I had this moment of standing there and going, I can feel my feet touching the floor. And realizing I had never thought about my feet touching the floor. I couldn't remember the last time I had felt that. Yeah. And I was practicing yoga at the time, and it was after that moment, I walked into the studio, and I stood there in Tadasana and went, oh, yeah, that's what they're talking about. I'm like 10 years into my practice at that point. I was that person. But I had to sit there in silence in this space that I was so worried about being too quiet and not having everything around me and going, this is good.
Yeah.
It's good to take a moment, and pregnancy is a time that is so perfect for that.
Yeah.
It is, 40-ish weeks of everything changing, but also the biggest lessons you're ever going to learn about yourself.
Yeah.
And I think even for partners, you as a dad, think about the time when you were waiting to have a baby.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And how much self-reflection is going to be there, whether you want to or not.
Man, Yeah.
I mean, I think you were probably masking that a little bit at the time.
Oh, I was definitely. Yeah, I was. Still
I've heard the stories.
I was a dumb kid. I was an ignorant kid. Yeah, totally.
But it was like in the back of your mind going, dude,
figure this shit out.
You're going to have to be responsible.
You have to be responsible. I was so in my head.
This is your fault.
God, quick little fucking story about how in my head I was and how much I didn't want to be there for my first kid. Accidental pregnancy. No, we weren't planned. We had our first kid at 23, 24. So babies having babies, more or less. Yeah. And I remember I was sitting outside. I think we just checked in for the birthing day. And I got, Sydney set up and the mother of my children set up in the room. And then I went downstairs to have a cigarette because, hey, fucking smoke.
Why wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah. Don't know when I have a chance to smoke again. And so I'm sitting there at outside the hospital, just like not lamenting, but just like, oh man, this is where you're at in life. Okay, we're going to figure this out.
Just
fucking hell. All right. And then I'm like, just stop it. And then I look over and I see this person leave the hospital and walk by the garbage can and just like snatch something off the top of it. And I was like, oh, I've seen that in movies before. Is this person a spy? And I'm like, well, I clearly don't want to think about this whole fatherhood thing. So I'm going to pretend this person's a spy and I'm going to follow them for a little while. And so I was like watching this person like awkwardly kind of like, shifty eyed move around the world in this like 100 yard area of which I was following him. Like, I'm trying to be secretive, following this person on the sidewalk, and I see the person stop and like duck in a little alley and look, and then I'm like, oh my God, this is a real spy. Like I'm really seeing something. And then I see him stop again, leans down, picks up a cigarette butt and lights it, and I'm like, oh, no, it's a homeless person.
It's a homeless person who was just, I was like, my brain immediately went to, like, this is their drop. Their dealer leaves this right here, and they walk past, and this is how they're doing the handoff.
I got duped by a homeless person.
You got duped by a homeless person, and somebody leaving a tiny little bit of tobacco in their cigarette.
Totally. Yep.
Okay.
Just want to get out of there.
Thinking someone's a spy is a really good distraction for sure.
Yeah.
And the stories we tell ourselves in our mind are fascinating. But yeah, you knew in the back of your head that everything was about to change and you have so much time to think about that. And yoga in pregnancy actually makes that space for people.
Yeah. Okay, so what about third trimester?
Third trimester, everything hurts. Everything's uncomfortable.
Yep.
They're generally carrying anywhere from 25 to 50, 60 pounds more than they normally do.
Man.
In such a short amount of time, right? Those of us who have gained or lost large amounts of weight, it hits different in pregnancy.
Oh my God, yeah. I can imagine, especially when you mentioned relaxin.
Yeah.
Right? Like I read somewhere, I can't remember the figure, but it's like every pound of weight over, quote unquote, overweight that you are puts 7 times that much weight on your joints below the hips. So knees, ankles, hips. And then you put relaxin on top of that.
And then your joints are like, ooh, I'm going to get a little sloppy.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's that. So balance challenge for sure. Their backs hurt more. Their hips hurt more.
Yeah.
Everything just kind of hurts more. Definitely. So the second trimester, there's kind of this sweet spot where things feel physically better, like their bellies are growing, but
usually morning sickness is kind of
like the nausea stuff is gone. Some of that stuff will start to come back.
Okay.
Tons of heartburn.
Oh yeah.
Not sleeping well, because they have to get up and pee every couple of hours. If you stay in one particular place, your hip or your back or whatever starts to hurt.
Right.
Turning over is a monumental task. So they're exhausted.
Yeah.
With my private clients, oftentimes in the third trimester, especially towards the end, we never get off the mat. Right? We are sitting or laying down the entire time.
Cool.
One trick just across the board about laying a pregnant woman on her back is they are going to have been told that laying on your back will kill your baby.
Oh.
There is a blood supply to the uterus.
Okay.
That when laying down, pressure from the uterus onto that blood supply.
Gotcha.
And so, yes, laying on flat on the back is not great.
Is that third trimester or in general?
Second trimester too.
Second.
But
okay.
essentially what happens though is the body starts to feel really terrible if you do that. Women will be like, oh my God, I woke up and I was laying on my back.
Right.
And I said, what happened when you woke up? And she was like, I was like gasping for air and felt really like nauseous and panicky. I'm like,
wow.
yeah, because your body said, not a great idea. You should move.
So it's like almost like a reaction that your body's like, nope, panic, get out, abort, we can't do this.
Listen to your body. So when you're doing things on the back, and this feels fantastic in the third trimester, is building basically a skateboard ramp of blocks and bolsters.
Okay.
So you got a block on the lowest setting, and then you've got a block high, and then you take a nice firm bolster, lay it there.
Yeah.
Then you recline the back over that thing, and arms out to the sides, open up.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Anytime you're going to have them on your back, one hip propped up, stick a towel, stick a blanket just a little bit off.
Okay.
And that's enough to take that pressure off.
Oh, okay.
Because it's going to shift the weight of the uterus just a tiny little bit.
Oh, okay.
But if they're flat on their back, they're not going to feel good anyway.
Yeah.
So
okay.
They're not going to want to be there.
Oh, that's one that I don't think I have heard.
Finding ways you can fake them being on their back is fantastic.
Okay.
Because everybody misses being on their back.
Right.
At that point. And opening everything up.
Yeah.
You think supported fish here, but it's just high level.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you're on your back and the knees are bent, does that create space, or is that still that's a no-no?
No.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah. The uterus is still going straight down.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
it protects your lower back. Right. It doesn't protect the weight of the uterus coming down.
Okay. All right.
So that's kind of the third trimester stuff. Their blood pressure may be a little bit higher. A lot of women's blood pressure ticks up at the end of pregnancy. They are probably feeling a little more anxious.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I want to get to what a yoga teacher, some advice you can give to yoga teachers. But first, we'll probably end on that. But so with the training that you're putting together with Marianne, is this a certification type training to where, go through this and then you'll be certified through Yoga Alliance with an 85-hour
Yes,
credit?
It is.
Now, do you have to have previous experience? Like, do I have to be a 200-hour like an RYT or anything like that?
No.
Gotcha. Okay.
We are opening this up I want to open this up to anyone who works with women in a capacity that phrase, listen to your body, resonates. Mm-hmm. Who wants to bring a more woman-centered practice and really, we really sit in that feminine energy.
Right.
But a doula or a midwife or a childbirth educator, it could be incredibly valuable. Because even if you're just working with a woman in labor, if you understand how the physical body moves.
Right.
But we've also got this gift of Marianne's knowledge of somatics and creating that safe space.
Right.
And both of us are incredibly passionate about body autonomy.
Yeah.
And talking about how we address that as, yoga teachers as a whole, but specifically around the prenatal practice. How do we help women sink into this time and let that feminine energy really resonate? Because if you think about it, that is the energy of creation. That is the energy, we can go in all the mythologies and we will find a version of this.
Right, yeah.
The feminine energy creates. Mm-hmm. But we live in a society that says you got to get stuff done. And that masculine energy, they're trying to work at their corporate job.
Right, yeah.
And grow human.
Right.
So how do you make a safe space for that?
That's a big dichotomy.
And so as a teacher, how do you make sure that you are creating that space? And it doesn't matter how they move as long as you keep them safe.
Right.
It matters that you are addressing that part.
Yeah.
So that's really what we're creating with this. I personally, selfishly, want to have a couple of prenatal teachers in my stable. I am going to be starting to teach prenatal yoga under contract with one of the local hospitals, one of the big hospitals where people have babies.
Cool.
And I don't want to be the only one who does it, you know?
Right, yeah.
How many times have I taught for you in the last year?
More times than I taught in the last year.
last couple months, for sure. I want to be able to go on vacation and still have my students have a class.
Totally.
I want to be able to bring in a teacher that I know gets it in the way that I teach it.
Yeah.
Just like in any of our classes. I always go to someone personally and ask someone to cover for me rather than going, hey, giant group, who wants to teach my class?
Totally, yeah.
There are folks that resonate with the way I teach, and I want to make sure that my students that are regulars have consistency. Same thing with that. I'd love to have that. But I also want to change the way we think about childbirth education.
Yeah.
I have a good friend who is a very well-known childbirth educator, and she teaches childbirth educators too. And I said, I love you, but you give women this like, okay, listen to your body, and here's like 5 ways of moving. It feels good to circle your hips. It feels good to lean forward. Here's a variation of child's pose. Like, you give them those things, and you just go, okay, do this thing that's going to take 30 hours.
Right.
With those tools.
Yeah.
I want to get it out there more that if we just spend, the academic knowledge is great, but nobody has ever thought a baby out.
Yeah. Yeah, right, yeah.
Nobody has, I've been saying that for years.
Yeah, that's a great one. I love that.
You cannot be in your thinking brain and give birth.
Yeah.
So if we can create yoga classes that take them out of their thinking brain, we are practicing for labor.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of weird childbirth education out there. Hold a piece of ice for a minute. It's not the same.
Right, yeah.
It's not the same.
Now, I imagine there's, with, I don't want to say the times we're in. I'm trying to say this not in the right way, but in a non-ignorant way. But, there's different mentalities, obviously, with pregnancies. But now we have same-sex marriages that may have not had an opportunity to have a child before that are now able to have a child, like say women, a dual woman relationship.
Yeah.
We have transgender folks that may have been born a woman and are now recognizing as a man, but still have the opportunity to have a baby.
Yes.
And sometimes do, right? Take that to full term. Now, is there... obviously the reproduction side is the same, right? You have baby comes out, right? But there's a big I would imagine, a mental change in that, right? One from the same sex marriage idea of, 2 moms can't have babies, and does one have, does the other have? There's there's that dichotomy, and then there's the transgender side of I couldn't even assume any of the arguments or happenings in the head of a person that's going through that.
It's really
on
hard.
Top of now having a baby and maybe looking as a man, but having a pregnant belly, things like that. And already life is
hard enough as it is.
Life's hard and probably like very explanatory, and that just has to be exhausting. Yeah. So
the bravery involved in those men who will step into that space and biologically carry a baby, I cannot tell you how much I admire that choice. Yep. I'm not the most qualified person I can physically help you through your pregnancy, but I really think that there is so much more support that those people need.
Right, yeah.
That I want to make sure that idea of tapping into your divine feminine and that feminine energy doesn't resonate with them, and I don't want it to. Right,
yeah. This
is strictly, you have the biology to pull this off.
Right. And I'm sure there's going to be, with the open-mindedness and the abilities to have that wherewithal to put your ego aside and be like, hey, I support you 100%, right? You have a baby, listen to your body, but I'm not the right person. I can help you deliver that baby and make sure your body feels safe. But as far as like the mental side and the cognition side and what you need to prepare yourself, maybe I'm not the right person, right? And I think there's a beauty in that, being able to recognize like, I will help you in all the ways that I feel I can, but I'm not going to bastardize my learning, but I'm not going to put you in a compromising position just so my ego can champion itself and be like, yeah, help the person that needed it, right? Yeah. So, I do think there's, with the where we're moving towards, in that somatic ideas and listening to your bodies and the more accepting ideas of gender equality and gender recognition and things like that, if not already there, then that support's being developed and being kind of cultured so that, the humans in this world feel the support that they need.
Yeah. I'm lucky to know people who are far more qualified than I to support those people through pregnancy. It would be my preference that I teach those people how to combine what they do to help those people, because that gender dysphoria, which those people have been living with their entire lives,
right? Yeah,
is so escalated during that time.
Right.
They need a ton of support, and I will do everything I can possible to help them find it. A lesbian couple is another story. I feel pretty good about supporting in that situation, partially just because I have so many friends and so much lived experiences. And if women are willing to tap into the feminine and that doesn't insult them, then I can be their teacher.
Awesome. Right.
It doesn't matter who they're sleeping with. It doesn't matter who the parents of the baby are. I don't care.
Right.
It is simply that my particular methodology goes that direction. It's not going to resonate with someone who is male.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
It's. I think that's.
We're also not the right yoga teachers for anybody in any particular class. Yeah. We've all had somebody walk in and go, you know what? No matter what I do, this isn't going to be the right class for you.
Yeah, totally. 100%.
You hated everything I just did.
Yep.
Let me introduce you to my friend Adam.
Exactly. Yeah, I had a woman the other day that came out of my hatha class and was like, it was kind of loud and really hot. The other class I took the other day wasn't as loud and wasn't as hot. I'm like, cool. Now you know the difference between our class and that person's class. More power to you. Thank you for expressing your concerns, but I've gotten more feedback saying that this is the class that I feel comfortable taking and teaching and delivering and people feel comfortable receiving, rather than, because you didn't like the way my music sounded in the heat, I'm going to change everything because of that. No, but I'm not going to do that, but I really will help you be supported and find the right teacher for you.
I know every teacher on our schedule. I can tell you, I think you would click really well with this person. If you want a little bit softer presentation, if someone who doesn't crank the heat nearly as much as I do. Right.
And we need to know that about ourselves.
Yeah.
It's like when I worked in restaurants for 20 years, like if I jumped at every single guest complaint that individual had, that restaurant would change day to day.
Yeah.
Based off of those feedbacks. And what does that do? That bastardizes the chain, the name of the person that developed the concept, right? And so by no means am I saying tough shit, go somewhere else, but there is a place, right? There is a teacher for those folks. And if it's not you, get off your fucking ego chair and help them find the right person, because it doesn't champion anybody to give somebody false information or information that you feel is coming from a good place. But if you would have really checked yourself, you'd understand that you're just speaking from an egoic place, right?
It's so much the ego part of taking feedback.
Right.
And I mean, I'm not going to lie. This is something I struggle with. My partner will tell you that my defense, I feel like I'm being criticized. I am just all up in myself.
Yep, I feel that.
And, it's not a fun interaction. Moving away from that, allowing someone to say how they perceived what we did.
Right.
Without us being attached to their opinion.
Right.
But also honoring their opinion and say, you know what, I do hear that I'm not the right teacher for you, and I'm really grateful that you told me this. I'm not going to, I need to stay authentic to myself, my teaching style, and what I know has worked for me. But what I can do is introduce you to a couple of my friends over here who teach the same format of class, but it feels really different.
Yeah.
And let's help you find that.
Yes. Definitely.
Your sequencing in a vinyasa class isn't complicated enough and is too complicated in every single class you do.
Sounds about right.
Right? Yeah. Oh my God, that was so much fun. Can we do more of that? Someone else is going to be like, oh, I was totally lost. That was so frustrating.
Yep. Yep. I was cursing your children the entire time.
And, when I was working as a doula, it was the same thing. I am not the right doula for every person. there are plenty of people out there who are going to approach things. There are people that want someone that is the same religious faith as them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you can't control that stuff sometimes.
Yeah, there are people who want someone of a particular cultural background, or I was too young or too old or anything like that. You know, they want the grandma doula or they want the sister doula.
Right. It's like I got a friend that's an actor. I got multiple friends that are actors, and it's like you didn't lose out on the part because you're not talented. You lost out on the part because they wanted a 6'3" African American with dreaded hair and big feet. You know, there's very specific roles sometimes people want, right?
You can't change.
And if you're a short white dude, then you're not going to play basketball on that TV show because you're not fitting the and that's fine. Right?
And the best actor in the world cannot pull that off and make it believable.
Right. You can't switch out Denzel Washington's tall ass with Tom Cruise's short ass, right? And expect not to see a difference and understand there's a difference, right?
So funny thing, I walk into every class I cover for you and I say, clearly, I am not Adam.
Right.
Because you learn really early on, you cannot pretend to be another teacher. You cannot.
Never ends well.
And especially, in my world, I've got my classes that are mine. I often cover Marianne's classes. I often cover your classes. Mm-hmm. There's a huge difference.
Right, yeah.
And I try to recognize what the expectation is for this time slot in this format, and I try to give something, there's a lot more energy in the classes I'll cover for you. There's a lot more softness in the stuff I cover for Marianne, but there's still me.
Yeah, totally.
And that is, I think, lesson for all yoga teachers. And recognize what your limitations are is huge.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate and respect that. Now, last thing I want to go over real quick is, so there's, maybe some tips we can give yoga teachers as teachers, not prenatal teachers, but yoga teachers.
Yeah.
And I'll give you some of the generic things that I've heard over the years.
This would be fun.
I've totally always loved these. First trimester, no big twist because you could unanchor the baby.
No.
Okay.
You're not going to unanchor the baby. It's not great.
Yeah.
You're more likely to pull something and have it hurt really bad.
Okay.
The baby's fine.
Okay. I always hear, the thing I hear is the umbilical cord will come loose. You're going to sever the umbilical cord if you twist too abruptly.
No.
Okay.
No,
Good to
you're
know.
not.
Good to know.
It is that there's a lot of crampy stuff at the beginning of pregnancy, and that is literally the uterus getting bigger.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the ligaments that connect the uterus to the body are being stretched. Mm-hmm. If you twist, you are stretching it more.
Which ligaments don't want to stretch.
No, they're not they're not as much of a fan of that as you would think.
Yeah.
Fun biological fact: set of those ligaments, it connects to the clitoris.
Oh, interesting.
So women will often. It's tied to prenatal yoga.
Yeah.
Women will come in and I feel like I have electric shocks in my crotch.
Wow.
That's what that is.
Well, I guess being a male yoga teacher, I've never heard that one before.
Never. Oh, yeah. They'll say it to me all the time.
Perking up, listening to that.
We call it, fire crotch or something like that. But yes.
Technical terms, right?
Technical terms. I mean, we get really fancy in this. But yes, when they're saying that, at least being able to tell.
Yeah.
Knowing what's going on at particular times, you're able to assure people what's normal and then make suggestions when they're not.
Okay. Wow. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I know this can be an opinionated one, and I don't want to say somebody's opinion is wrong because I'm obviously not a medical professional, but I've heard a lot of people come in that have had stable yoga practices before pregnancy, whether it's a year, 2 years, 10 years, 6 months, whatever, right? But they've had a practice that now that they've become pregnant, their doctor's like, you can never do hot yoga again.
In a hot room.
You cannot even look or think about a hot room. Your baby's going to die. I don't, but I've also heard the counter to that as if you have, this is the counter I've heard. Now, if you have an established yoga practice before you get pregnant, you can continue on hot yoga. You can continue on with that level of intensity as long as you listen to your body. Now, if you're going 5 days a week, and then you get pregnant, you continue to go 4 to 5 days, that's great. If you go 1 day a week and then you start going 5 days a week, there might be some problems. Now, that's one of those kind of generic, responses that I've heard. How, what's your familiarity or your opinion on that one?
So number one, it's going to be very individual to how the pregnancy impacts the person.
Okay.
We are not going to know how a regular experienced student is going to feel in the hot room at any point in their pregnancy.
Okay.
So that's part of it. There is some risk in elevating body temperature for an extended period of time in the development of the baby, and it's actually the risk is more in the beginning of pregnancy.
Oh, okay.
Often the students who are practicing early in their pregnancy, that's a little more risky.
Because they might not even know they're pregnant.
They might not even know they're pregnant, right? Or, or they feel fine, so let's go.
Yeah.
First prenatal visits in the U.S. are not the minute you find out you're pregnant. You find out you're pregnant, you contact the doctor's office, and they'll be like, okay, we'll see you at 12 weeks.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
And people are just like, go about whatever. Or stop doing everything because they've heard that they should.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are the two options usually. I know an OB who delivers babies who practiced hot yoga through her pregnancy.
Okay. Great.
And we've talked about it. She felt that she could monitor herself. I have had, even just recently, I think we've both had this student in class that practiced through a lot of her pregnancy. She would set up by the door and she would literally just kick the door open when she got too hot and lay down, right? And that's what I want people to do if they have chosen for themselves and are making an educated decision to continue that practice. I think part of it is people who practice hot yoga don't think that they can have a good practice if they're not hot.
That's very fair. It's very fair.
Some of them have never done any yoga that isn't hot.
Yep, totally.
And so if we can find ways to offer them a practice, and a generic prenatal yoga class for people who have never done yoga might not be the thing for them.
Right.
But there are things that can happen. There are practices, probably even at the same studio, that might be a little bit better suited than the most intense.
Sweat your face off.
Sweat your face
like
off,
a Disney villain.
melting. Somebody once said to me, on a scale of yin to Marianne's 75-minute power on Sunday, where does my R&R class go? And my answer was, it's on the other side of the yin.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
And what she wanted to know is she going to need to take a shower before she goes and does something else? Does she have time?
Wow.
But we all have that scale of practices within our own studios. And even if you can start to go, if this starts to feel too intense, but you don't want to give up your practice, remember that these are available to you. Offering private, like setting them up with a good prenatal yoga teacher to do some privates.
Yeah.
Can be really, really helpful. And what I like to do with those people is really help them sink into their personal practice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's such a good time to foster that in them. And that way they can challenge their body exactly where it is every day.
Yeah, because that's where, yoga is a very individual practice in general, even though we go to group classes for the most part. But especially when your body's going through that many changes, as pregnancy does, having that person that can really kind of stair step you through the changes that your body's having. Okay, last week you could extend a leg. This week we got to bend the knee. This week you can't sit up without a block. Last week you could, whatever, right?
I've been sitting here holding this block waiting for you to need it for the last 6 weeks.
Totally. Wow.
And I do a lot of private work like that. I do private individual sessions. We will go weekly. I will even, I'll do them on Zoom. I will give them the recordings, whatever works for people to keep them practicing if they're really concerned about that. I compare it to, you will see an elite level runner, marathon runner, finish the Boston Marathon pregnant. It is not a thing that hasn't happened. There were multiple pregnant Olympians.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. I guess, it makes sense,
like
but
medals.
I just never even thought about it.
Right.
Wow. Okay, cool.
High-level athletes of
awesome.
whatever they do. Are they going to be their very, very tip-top? No. Should someone run their first marathon while pregnant? No, they shouldn't. They shouldn't even start going out and running around the block.
Right, yeah.
So as a general rule, physical stuff, if you were doing it pre-pregnancy, and you're willing to modify as your body tells you to modify, staying with what that is, tell your doctor you're doing it because it's not coming from me. Tell your midwife, talk to, have a conversation with them. The other thing is they can't tell you, no, you cannot do hot yoga.
Right. Yeah.
Are they going to come with you? Are they living in your house?
Right.
There are also our students that are showing up against a physician's recommendation for a variety of things. Pregnancy is only one of the list.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
I have a medical condition that says I shouldn't do yoga.
What's that?
Ehlers-Danlos. It's a connective tissue disorder. It's a genetic hypermobility.
Hypermobility, yeah. Okay, yeah.
But I have a...
Like extreme hypermobility?
My hypermobility isn't as bad as my other parts.
Okay.
But yesterday I took a new student's class that was Vinyasa. Mm-hmm. I hadn't practiced any in a long time. I felt terrible. It felt good while I was doing it.
Right, yeah. And afterwards.
Everything hurt.
Yeah.
Half an hour later.
Damn.
Because for me to get any sensation, I have to go way too far.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of, you just have to say it's your choice what you do with your body. And I firmly believe that.
Yeah. Well, actually, it actually leads in the last thing I wanted to run by you. We mentioned it earlier. It's the relaxin.
Yeah.
So relaxin is one of those other things that I hear. I've gotten teacher training is, but what I really want to kind of get your opinion on, or maybe there's a hard rule or hard biology thing on with this, but I've heard that relaxin sticks around in the system up to 6 months after you stop breastfeeding. Which again is like one of those things that not a lot of people are told about, and I get people that come in that are like, 8 months after their pregnancy or their birth, and I'm like, cool, okay, first time back, let me just ask you quick questions, it might be personal, let me know if it is. Are you breastfeeding? Yes. Cool. Okay, so just so you know, your body's still really slippery. Right, your joints are really still loose, right? So be careful. Like if you're in half pigeon, you're like, "Wow, I've never been able to get into half." Back out.
Don't
now. Get out of there. You're not safe. So is that a general And I know it's probably not a hard fast rule, but is that a generalized 6 months after breastfeeding? Is there a rough time when that hormone kind of dips out?
I don't have and I would need to go back and actually look at that hormonal. That cycle.
Yeah.
I don't think it's actually relaxin at that point.
Okay.
I think what it is the joint, all of them have separated.
Yep.
Everything it is the knitting back together of the body.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And you have connective tissues that have loosened that don't automatically spring back.
And if you're still encouraging that big opening in your yoga practice, then Let's
go back to the ACL because it's a really common thing. You have people who they haven't completely torn it, but it's a little sketchy. Maybe it's going to go someday. What should they be doing on their knee?
Right.
Compared to someone who's never had a knee issue whatsoever. That ACL is not as stable as this person over here who has done great things, strengthening the musculature around their legs, all of that. Everything in a woman's body has changed during pregnancy. They have lost strength, no matter what they've done. Their actual skeleton has shifted, and the support structures do take time to come back.
Right.
There's hormonal components in breastfeeding that can impact the practice as well, but I don't tie it to any particular time frame.
Okay.
I take it to we need to go back in as slow as we would as a new student.
Brand new body, brand new abilities.
You are working the first time you walked into a class.
Yep.
How did you move? How careful were you?
Yeah.
And as teachers, the things we're looking for anyway, you can look at that person and go, that knee, not good, not good. Don't do that.
Yep, nope.
And anytime I see somebody, who's their ankle's wobbly or whatever, it doesn't matter if it's a strength issue or if it's a connective tissue issue or whatever. The issue is they're wobbling in a way that they could hurt themselves.
Right. Yeah.
So coming back into the practice is giving themselves the grace there's also a huge amount of body image stuff. Yeah. You leave the place you give birth looking like you did at about 7 months pregnant.
Yeah.
And when you're cleared to go back to yoga, your body does not, unless you're jumping right in with a personal trainer who's going to, we're not in Hollywood.
Right, yeah.
It's not our clientele.
Yeah.
And there's certain people who genetically snap back really well, but it is much more treat them like a new student.
Yeah, well, that's good advice. So with all of the trainings that you and Marianne are developing now, when is this first kind of iteration coming up?
So mid-October to mid-November.
Okay.
We're running weekend series in person at Bliss.
Okay.
For the first one. We'd love to do online eventually, and there has definitely been requests for that. But we want to we're both very confident in our teaching material, but until you actually do it with a group of humans, you just never know what you need to tweak.
Yep.
So we're running that first version there. We still have some spots available. And I don't know when this is actually going to go live, but there's even a little bit of early bird time left.
Oh, good. Very cool.
So we're going to, it's basically October 15th-ish that weekend through that mid-November.
Cool. All right.
And there's a couple of Fridays and then full days Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
During that time. I am going to be starting a prenatal class at Bliss that is going to run Saturday mornings at 8 a.m.
I'm excited for that. Not that I can attend. I'm excited for the students.
You're welcome to attend. I have always said, come, any yoga teacher, come to a prenatal class and do it.
Yeah.
Right? Because what I'm cueing, your body feeling it will give you a better idea of what to do. And I've had doulas come. I've had childbirth educators come. Whenever you want to come. Fantastic.
Yeah, that's cool.
But we're going to have a class going that class gets to have the opportunity to then work with.
Oh, that's cool.
So, because one of my big beefs with the prenatal teaching out there is you've got non-pregnant bodies imagining bellies.
Right, yeah.
And even if you put a fake belly on a person, it doesn't feel like a pregnant body.
Right.
So having pregnant women, even just being in class with them and practicing and catching them out at the corner of your eye, giving them the opportunity to teach little parts as they're ready, that's going to be so fun.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to be able to combine the two of those things. And I'm just really excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. Oh man, I love these. I love
so excited.
When things are budding, just like being literally birthed.
Right.
So where can people find you?
So my website is inbodyflow.com. It branches out from there. I have my prenatal stuff, which is group classes, private stuff. And I also have a life coaching business that's more focused on neurodiversity because.
Oh, cool.
Like talk about two completely different things.
Wow.
But as a neurodiverse woman who was diagnosed late in life, I've realized that we're doing that wrong too.
I think most of us are neurodivergent in some kind of way.
I have come to truly believe that. But there's something about being, a late 40s woman and going, oh God, all of these things that I have done my entire life that I've been horrified about.
I think that I feel the same way about myself. Like I think I'm undiagnosed autistic or something, in a way.
I just took a quiz, like a really highly, it's accurate from my therapist that says I'm autistic.
Yeah.
Which great joy in my partner to be able to go, oh look, so since you're autistic, I'm like, yes, hi, look at how amazing I am.
Yep, totally.
So those two things branch from there. I'm actually doing a lot of work on the website, so it's going to look very different in a little bit of time. Instagram, InBody Mama is where the prenatal stuff lives.
Cool.
So hang out there. Always reach me, come to Bliss and hang out. Love to talk.
Definitely.
Because I'm there a lot. I teach a couple other places too, but...
Yeah. And we'll leave links and ways to get in touch with Megan in the show notes. Links for the prenatal trainings that you're doing and the classes that you'll be teaching at Bliss. So there'll definitely be ways to get in touch with Megan. So
Miles Circuit.
Mile Circuit.
Circuit.
Yeah.
Go to themilescircuit.com.
Yeah.
We'll add that in there. I accidentally invented a series of what is now, I realize, yoga.
Yeah.
To help women turn babies' positions in labor. You heard the phrase back labor?
Yeah.
It's because the back of a baby's head is pressing against the nerves in the back of the spine.
Wow.
And babies can rotate. You just need gravity. So it came in 2 o'clock in the morning when a friend was at a birth that wasn't progressing.
Yeah.
We threw it up on a website, and it has gone a lot of places that I had no clue was going to happen.
Is it becoming like a standard or like
pretty much, yes.
Wow,
You walk into hospitals, and not just in Seattle, and they'll hand you a flyer with my ex name on it, by the way. And it's being recommended for all the wrong things. You know, it's very actually intentional. I like to lurk on like online groups that talk about pregnancy, and someone will bring it up in a way that it's not intended, and I'll just pop in and say, that's not it. Yeah. And then one of my friends will come underneath and go, and by the way, that is her. It's like my claim to fame.
With the Miles method, is that something that, and I hate to monetize anything, but is that something that you could like patent, or I don't know?
That ship has sailed as far as like anything, as far as that part of it. Yeah. My intention is actually to teach some training.
Cool. Okay.
I'm going to offer training both for pregnant people, pregnant women, to know it is essentially, you are talking about a really supported child's pose or melting heart type of situation.
Yep. Okay.
Pull the baby out of the pelvis. Roll them onto their left side, really well supported, one knee all the way up to their chest, the bottom knee straight. Okay. Almost rolling forward. So like pillows under their bellies. So then you're getting gravity to turn the baby. Okay. And then you get them up and get them lunging. Okay. So you have the pelvis side to side. Yeah. And it's essentially yin. It's 30 minutes in each place if they can tolerate it.
Holy Jesus.
Which is why I recommend practicing it before. Yeah. And I incorporate it in my teaching. Because telling a woman to stay in child's pose for 30 minutes, that's a lot. And that's where pillows and doing it on your bed and all of that come into play. And
this is for if the baby's breached?
Or no, that's where people will talk online and say, breech baby, what should you do? Miles circuit.
Gotcha.
No.
Okay.
It is for rotating where the baby's back is facing.
Got the back, so not like head to butt. But the head.
No, so you're just talking about like a rotation inside of a tube.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because the back of the baby's head and their spine, that's the heaviest part. You just get gravity to move that. I look back now and I go, I was teaching yoga then, and I didn't connect that. Yeah. But yes, the monetization of it, my friends roll their eyes because they're still doing birth work, as doulas walking into hospitals, and someone will hand them this flyer and they'll like ball it up and throw it away because it's not something everybody needs to do. Yeah. And telling someone they need to do something they don't need to do is no better than saying you don't know what to do. Right. Have an epidural.
Yeah. Huh. Wow. So is that method going to be something you teach in the 85-hour, or maybe even something that's...
I'm going to talk about it and teach them to present it as part of the practices they create. Okay. Because it's shapes you put them in. That side lying position is where they go for Shavasana.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's usually where I see pregnant people just at leg up, on the side, kind of like half frog almost, kind of situation.
But you just get something under the belly enough to support it up. A block works, a pillow work, a bolster, their sweatshirt, whatever. Yeah. So yes, that being incorporated in there, but I'm also going to be doing some training, in person and online about how to use that. How to understand what it's really about. I'm also going to go to some hospitals and do that. Cool. Because they know they're doing it wrong too. Yeah. And then have it available for women to take themselves. Because a lot of times their practitioners will say, do the Miles circuit. Or their friends will say, I did the Miles circuit and I went into labor. And for a long time, I was like, I can't monetize that. It's so simple. And then I went, you know what? I have information.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's valuable.
Totally.
And people value what they invest in.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely.
So yeah, that's part of the big plan.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. Well, man, I've learned so much. Just solidified some of the stuff I thought I knew. Gave me totally different ideas to look at different things that I thought like I'd never know about. So, so thank you for this conversation. This is amazing.
You're welcome.
You know?
Anybody that's listening, if you have a pregnant student and you just have a question, like my DMs are open. Grab me on Instagram, send me a question, say this is going on. I am happy to have a conversation because I think we just need to do a better job of this as a community.
Yeah.
Especially those of us who teach hot yoga, because we just need to figure out a way to allow our students to continue to practice yoga somehow.
There you go. There you go. And when we can find out that there's more information about something we've learned about, or maybe we only learned a pocket about something, and you want to deepen that knowledge to make you a better teacher, more well-rounded, whatever the reason, the information's there, right?
And come to the 85 hour. It's, it covers your continuing ed for the entire cycle, number one, if you want to do something. And it also, even if you never intend to teach pregnancy, if you teach primarily women and you really want to sink into that woman-centered practice, it's a great training.
Awesome.
So,
well,
thank you so much.
Megan, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
This was really fun.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
All right, see you later.
Thank you so much for joining Megan and I. Please check out the show notes for ways to get in touch with Megan, maybe ways that you can explore the trainings that her and Marianne are offering a little bit deeper, or just find some resources, right? Sometimes just to have a place for resources is beautiful. So, obeisance and love. We'll see you next time.